Hi, everyone, and welcome to Studio Jake. I, of course, am your host, Jacob Airy. Thank you for joining me today. On this channel, we talk about all things pop culture. We talk about industry news. We talk about film, anime, television. And if you hear some crunches and clicks in the background, that's because my dog is in here and he's just having a good old time with his chew toy. So, before we dive into the topic, be sure to hit that like button, click subscribe, and also maybe search for my books. I've got 3 novels out right now. This is Cacophony, A Tale of Faith and Fear. It's about a group of demons that are planning to take over a town and the angels that are sent to stop them. I've also got my fantasy series, The Seven Royals. So the first book is All Good Things, and it has a sequel, Breaking the Stars. It's part 1 and part 2 of a fantasy trilogy. It's feel like Lord of the Rings or Narnia or Dragon Ball Z even. I think you will enjoy this series. It's about some of your favorite fairy tale characters as they go on a quest to save their kingdoms from an evil overlord. So definitely check those out. You can find all these books on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. And if you want to download this one digitally, it is only available at BookLocker.com for digital download. So, with that in mind, I wanted to talk about something today, and I have to admit, there was a lot of topics that were coming up, and I don't like to talk about things that don't interest me. So sometimes I'll see something trending, but if it's about a topic or celebrity or whatever, I don't like to just jab about it. I want to be able to talk about things that I at least have some verse in, unless, with a couple of exceptions, obviously. Well, then a topic was landed in my lap yesterday evening. So what was this magical topic that just crash landed into my lap? It was the fact that the Walt Disney Company, their board of directors, has fired the latest Bob in the 2020s. They had brought on board Bob Chapek just ahead of the incident, and it's really kind of funny right now watching this because Bob Chapek, he has been relieved of his duties. This is from piratesandprincesses.net. Full disclosure, I do write for their sister site, clownfishtv.com. Just throwing that out there. Don't want anyone to think I'm low-key advertising for myself. I go to piratesandprincesses.net often for my Disney news because they're usually on top of everything. So, anyway, in a stunning turn of events, it's being reported that the Disney board has announced Bob Chapek is leaving and being replaced by Bob Iger. So Bob 2 is back. So Bob Eisner is Bob 1. Bob Iger is Bob 2, and Bob Chapek is Bob 3, so they brought Bob 2 back. The decision was just announced. The Walt Disney Company board put out this statement. We thank Bob Chapek for his service to Disney over his long career, including navigating the company through the unprecedented challenges of the pandemic. The board has concluded that as Disney embarks on an increasingly complex period of industry transformation, Bob Iger is uniquely situated to lead the company through this pivotal period. Always avoid alliteration. Not much else is known at this time. However, the rumor that Bob Iger could come back has apparently turned out to be true. This is actually a true thing. A lot of people were wondering if Bob Iger was going to set himself up for a return, because even though he stepped down as CEO, he did not resign himself as a member of the Disney board. So a lot of people thought that what was happening was Bob Iger was getting ready to oust Bob Chapek. So I have to admit, this kind of move, I'm not saying that it surprised me in the sense that I didn't think Disney would do it. It's just the timing of it is a little weird. I thought, because Chapek, as a lot of people have pointed out, over the past couple of years under Chapek's leadership, Disney actually renewed his contract. So they're breaking his contract. I guess they're just going to write him what they call a golden umbrella, where, a CEO, even if they're a terrible one, they get millions of dollars so they won't sue the company. It wouldn't surprise me. But what's interesting to me is the rehiring of Bob Iger. Like I said, a lot of people thought that this would happen. See, with Bob Iger, every Disney CEO posts the Disneys. So after Roy Jr. basically, um, so when Eisner took over, he had a great start. He revitalized the parks. He gave us such amazing classics like The Lion King and The Emperor's New Groove. He oversaw what they called the Disney Renaissance. It also started the partnership with Pixar. Now, but then towards the end, he did this weird shift where he started allowing all of these weird Disney sequels. So like there was Tarzan and Jane, Tarzan 2, which really wasn't a 2, it was a midquel. It wasn't even really a sequel. There was 101 Dalmatians Patch's Adventure, I think. There was two Cinderella sequels, a whole bunch of um, weird sequel. So he kind of, and also there was the failure of Euro Disney and Disney Hong Kong, which those parks still exist, but they just didn't catch on in the way that they thought it would. So then they brought on Bob Iger, and again, Bob Iger, he successfully took the MCU from Paramount Pictures. Remember, Paramount was overseeing the MCU originally because the Hulk, he was actually owned by Universal, and Spider-Man obviously with Sony, and a lot of the original, what we think of the early phases of the MCU, they were actually, some of them were different companies, and they all worked with Paramount to kind of bring together the Avengers. In fact, Avengers Age of Ultron is is the last time we see the Paramount Pictures. Now, Disney had already started to get its fingers in the pie at that point, but that was the last time. In fact, some of my criticisms of the newer MCU stuff, like Shang-Chi or Black Widow, is in fact that they feel more like Disney movies than they do Marvel films. I've said that before on other platforms. This is something I'm kind of, I won't say I'm famous for, but I'm known for saying. But anyway, so Bob Iger kind of oversaw that period. He brought in Lucasfilms. He brought in Pixar. Well, then Iger kind of did something a little strange. He immediately set out of ousting the people who were originally there. So John Lasseter, who was one of the founders of Pixar with Steve Jobs and George Lucas, he ousted him, and he got a Me Too violation, which of course didn't go anywhere. No one could ever prove any wrongdoing from him other than he hugged someone once, and replaced him with a crony, Jim Morris, who's the current president of Pixar. He then convinced George Lucas to retire, and then he handed over. And George Lucas was working with Kathleen Kennedy at the time. He had kind of wanted her to take over because she had been with him and Steven Spielberg from the beginning. Now, from interviews with Steven Spielberg, he didn't really care for Kathleen Kennedy. But anyway, she comes on board, but then Iger immediately brings her into the inner circle. Kevin Feige, he didn't have to oust because they had ousted a president of Marvel, who, by the way, was a bad president. He had made a lot of stunning, terrible decisions. I think his name was Ike Perlmutter. And so he puts Feige in charge of Marvel Studios. Feige had previously worked with Fox, producing the Fox X-Men series. Now, as soon as Feige left, that's when that series, in my opinion, started to go downhill. So he brings in kind of these big three. He acquires 20th Century Fox, now just called 20th Century Studios, and along with that came Blue Sky as well. And they immediately shut Blue Sky down, moved a lot of their animators over to Pixar. They've also, I believe, merged some of Disney animation with Pixar. My dog just sneezed if you heard that loud noise in the background. But anyway, Iger started also to kind of buy into the wokeism. So a lot of people are like, you can't define woke. Woke is just simply a hyper version of political correctness. Now, political correctness has been has been around for a long time. Even some of my favorite shows, such as Star Trek: The Next Generation, they have sort of this politically correct stance. We're gonna see things a certain way. We're going to do things a certain way, but appeal to particularly one side of the aisle. But it's not going to influence the narrative so much. We're just going to kind of pepper it in. Wokeism does the opposite of that. Wokeism comes in with a sledgehammer, and it's like, it's our way or the highway. And or actually, they drink too much soy, so it's more like, it's our way and the highway. So anyway, wokeism is just this hyper version of political correctness. It's the insertion of far left ideals into dialogue, into narrative, into plot. The problem with that is, like anything that's has even a variation on the left, so connected to socialism, communism, there's no imagination because you have to follow these standards, and if you veer off just a little bit, then you're going to get in trouble. Bob Iger caved to this crowd. The Critical Drinker famously calls it the message, and Bob Iger dove headfirst in this. Well, the problem with it is that old adage, go broke, go woke, is true. I said that backwards. Go woke, go broke. Sorry. Anyway, so he did this. Well, Disney, what happened? Disney starts losing profits. They start engaging in sort of these culture war things when before they were sort of politically neutral with some sprinkling of liberalism in there. But, for the most part, it was mostly just kind of eye roll moments. But now they're like pushing it in. They're like full on pushing it. They started caving to weirdos on social media and whatnot. But so Iger was they were kind of like, okay, Iger, your time's up. Ironically enough, your time is up. Step aside. So they brought in Bob Chapek, who was over Disney parks at the time. Now, what was different with Iger versus Chapek was Iger was all about all our subsidiaries are the future. So we've got Star Wars. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. Chapek is totally different. Chapek is like, we're gonna bring these people under the umbrella of Disney more fully, and they're going to be more accountable. We're not just going to let them run wild. We're going to try to rein them in a little bit. Now, that was a good strategy because, despite some of these very left-leaning projects being released, they also had some good stuff. So we got to see Star Wars. So for every Obi-Wan Kenobi, there was a Star Wars vision, and the list goes on down the line. So I really think that with it, so Chapek, though, they had kind of tried to set him up as a fall guy, and Chapek was not having it. He is like, I'm not going to be the fall guy. He fires some big names at Disney. He gets an ally put on the board with him. All this other kinds of stuff, but just the pressure, just the sheer social pressure that is coming at Disney because especially after the merger with Fox, or excuse me, the acquisition of 20th Century Fox, they've become this a bigger global powerhouse than they already were, and it just seems like Chapek was just no nonsense. Now, he did cave to sort of these purveyors of wokeism. He did cave to them on several occasions. He did this video after the whole incident with a Florida bill where it was an anti-groomer bill and it got mislabeled. And he was saying, it came out that Disney was donating to politicians on both sides. So not just Democrats like the woke crowd wanted, they were also donating to Republicans. Well, Disney angered everyone because of this. Bob Chapek does a video conference. It looks like it's a hostage situation. And but then he started to exert more control. The problem is he just couldn't exert the control that he needed. So they fire him despite his contract not being up. Like I said, we'll never know how many millions they paid him off to keep him from suing them. But they brought Iger back. Why did they bring Iger back? He was starting the downfall. He was setting Chapek up to be the fall guy. Now, one of two things can happen with Iger. He's gonna go back to relying on people like Kathleen Kennedy. Now, someone asked me on Twitter, "Do you think that Iger is going to fire Kennedy?" No, she is his biggest ally. Feige was there before. Even Jim Morris was kind of involved with Pixar before Iger. Kennedy is his acolyte. She's not going anywhere now. Count on a contract extension. We might as well just have a funeral for Star Wars at this point. I think it's done. Now, that's one way. I could be wrong, because the other way is he's learned from his mistakes. Maybe he's going to come back and he's going to right the ship. But you don't bring on when the ship is sinking and you bring on a new captain who tries to right it, even if he's going the wrong direction. You don't fire him and bring back the guy who caused all the holes to begin with. This is a very interesting move by Disney. I don't know where it's going to go. Like I said, I'm just surmising. I honestly think it's going to go back to business as usual with Iger in charge. I don't think he's going to worry about profitability. He's going to care more about the message, again, as the Critical Drinker says. I think that it's going to be a couple of more years. They're saying that he has a 2-year contract. It's going to turn. I bet you it's going to get an extension somehow, because Iger cares about his legacy. He may not necessarily. He is a Democrat. There was even rumors that he was going to challenge Biden in the 2024 Democrat primary. That he was going to set himself up at least as a VP candidate. So I don't know if that's true or not. But we're going to see how that goes. Now, he may realize that's not going to happen because we've got Gavin Newsom in the wings. He's wanting to swoop in. And I'm not trying to get too political here. I'm just saying it's going to depend on how Iger sees himself. Is he going to try to save his legacy as the CEO and president of Disney? Or is he just going, if he really is just in here for a quick fix and he's going to depart? Either way, I don't think Disney is going to be saved under his leadership. Disney is going to, especially the board, is going to have to get very serious on how they're going to handle all of this. I don't know where they're going to go, but just reading the tea leaves, it's not very good. I have a feeling we're going to see more pop-up studios try to appeal just to a general audience, not just to weirdos on social media, and we're going to find content there. Now, China, they're rejecting a lot of what Disney is putting out. That was a lot of their bread and butter. That's why they would edit things out that the Chinese censors didn't like. Well, now that they've been called on that, they've stopped doing it. So now China doesn't want their movies anymore, and now we're seeing a rise in Chinese animation. We're seeing them start to move forward with kind of anime-style animation, and even sort of Sony, which is a Japanese company, they worked with a Chinese animation company to produce Wish Dragon. And I liked Wish Dragon. I didn't think it was super blow me away amazing or whatever, but they're definitely going to try to step up their game. We're going to see a lot more of it. And I have a feeling Chinese entertainment, Japanese entertainment, Korean entertainment is going to be seen as an alternative. And we're going to see kind of a slow... I remember pre-2019, there was a lot of sort of culture people saying, oh, it's a golden age of television. The movies are failing, but television is on the rise. And I just don't see that anymore. That was a blip on the radar. I think we're going to have... I think American entertainment overall is going to have a couple more years before it really rises to the occasion. Because off the top of my head, I can only think of a handful of television shows I'm even interested in. So, like I said, exceptions to every rule. But we'll see which direction Disney is going to go, which way. Under Bob Iger's second tenure, we're going to see where it goes, what direction. I have a feeling it's not going to be a good one, but I could be proven wrong. That's just my opinion. I'm only speculating. If you liked that video, please leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Give it a thumbs up. And I would be honored today if you would subscribe. No matter what platform you're watching on, please subscribe. Hit that follow button. Share it out all over the place. And check me out on some of my other socials. I've got links in the description below. Also, check out my website, StudioJakeMedia.com, and consider supporting this channel on StudioJakeMedia.locals.com. It really helps smaller creators out. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.